What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. With all of the attention on Nintendo expecting them to announce a Direct for July, they go and do something completely out of left field and announce a certain game shadow dropping into their services that people have been kicking around and asking for quite some time now. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony, who's now filed a lawsuit against a game that probably isn't shocking because, well, many headlines were pointing it out when it was first revealed months and months ago. And then we have Gamescom coming up, and based on the lineup of titles that will be playable there, guys, it looks like Hollow Knight Silksong really is just a couple of months away. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with WB Games, who have had a pretty tough go of it when it comes to the live service stuff, whether it's Gotham Knights or Suicide Squad or several other games, really. Hasn't worked out so far in the DC universe mixed with the online multiplayer, like constantly evolving titles. So what do you think the strategy should be for WB Montreal, who just came off of Gotham Knights? Gotta try live service games again. This we can see was posted. This is over on Tech for Gamers. It says, we have found a job listing that reveals WB Games Montreal is working on a game based on DC Comics, utilizing a live service model. So yes, Warner Bros. Is going to continue down that live service path despite their recent failures. Now, they say it's unlikely the game will be based on Batman, as Rocksteady is moving forward with its own Batman game. So who knows what they're going to do here, but the live service push for WB is, it seems pretty obvious that it's not a great idea, but on their end, it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe we missed on a few of these. If we get just one right, we're good. It'll make up for everything else. So you just kind of keep down that path, and it's unfortunate because WB Montreal can make good single-player action-adventure experiences. It just seems to be when they bring in the live service aspect, it just kind of messes things up quite a bit there based on how they have to make the gameplay loop, and then naturally the progression that just never ends. Also, we do have some maintenance that's been scheduled by Nintendo on their website, which you can see, and this is pointing towards Wednesday, July 30th, 11 p.m. to Thursday, July 31st at 12:30 a.m., that being Pacific time, so like an hour and a half there or so of downtime for the network services, and they say it's for acquiring stage data, etc. And people looking at this, and typically they line up maintenance for Nintendo with some of this network services stuff with events like a Direct. I'm actually lining this up more so with the event that they are running their playtest, so that's what I figure is happening there. Here, them just like, again, doing network maintenance while also probably gathering data as to what's going on with the playtest, that sort of thing. So that's what I had align it to, although we're also expecting a Direct to be announced, I mean, probably today for Wednesday, although I guess it could still fit in July if it gets announced for Wednesday going into Thursday, but I don't necessarily line this up with the idea of a Direct, more so the playtest. Oh, and we may have had the release date leak out thanks to Xbox for Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. This has a bunch of the older Mortal Kombat games, whether it's arcade or Super Nintendo and others, all crammed into one collection, even including some of the Game Boy Advance titles, and they say that there are more surprises in the future for this one, but we can see this over on IGN. They say that Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection will release on September 30th, at least that's what the Xbox app was telling prospective players over the weekend. At this time, it's been moved back to the December 31st placeholder for 2025, and many people are anticipating that it could either be fully revealed with the release date at maybe this Nintendo Direct, or at EVO, which is coming up this weekend, and I mean, fighting games, that lines up completely. Mortal Kombat's there already, so yeah, why not have the release date and maybe some other games get thrown in there? I've been trying to think about what they might do, and they have some offshoots like the Sub-Zero at Mythology stuff. Like, they can put other things in there. I don't know if they're going to get into the PS2 or the GameCube generation for some of those games. They get a bit larger, but at least for what they're going for here, maybe some of those offshoots in that PS1 sort of generation would make sense. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo shadow dropping a game last night, and I already know people are looking at this and go, oh, that game? look, you have to understand, there is, yes, a ton of nostalgia at play here, but this is a game that people have been calling for since they saw the Joy-Con 2 rumors that it would have a mouse or optical sensor when some of those images came out. And there are a few games that people look at in Nintendo's history that would use mouse support well, and this is one of them, as we can see, this over on Nintendo's official account, where they say, draw, paint, animate, and compose music. What will you create in Mario Paint? Mario Paint is available right now as part of the Super Nintendo library for Nintendo Switch Online members. It gets really interesting because it has functionality, or added functionality specifically for the Switch 2. The Joy-Con 2 controllers will work as a mouse. So there it's Mario Paint, and I know, again, they showed here, which, by the way, they showcased this in like a 4-minute trailer, so more than we would typically get for most NSO games. And on top of that, they even broke out the Nintendo Direct voiceover for this thing, where they explained a bunch of aspects for it. So there is kind of a bit of an added importance for this game from Nintendo, and again, there is some legacy involved here with it back on the Super Nintendo. This was a pretty impressive just sort of suite of tools and almost like different mini games and stuff thrown into it. It was a very unique release, okay? I mean, at this time, we were using very basic and rudimentary paint programs as it is on our PCs, our computer stuff, but like here, it had that Nintendo touch to it, I guess you can say, so it had some goofiness to it. But the other thing here is if you have a Switch 1 that you'd be playing this on, you can use a USB mouse. So it's not like the Switch 1 owners can't get any kind of added functionality here. No, you plug in a USB mouse and you're good to go. I assume Nintendo, what they did was the game, the Super Nintendo ROM already supported a mouse, obviously. So I guess they just kind of designed it and updated it so that it would work with either USB or with that Joy-Con 2 mouse. So it's a little more straightforward just because that functionality was already there, which we heard through like data mining and stuff that was something that was present in the files. So they just went ahead, I guess, connected the dots and set it up here so it would work across the board. The other thing with this, though, is they did add music from Mario Paint to Nintendo Music application on your phone, and that is another big thing, the music that goes along with it. You can compose your own stuff, but it also kind of has some of its own timeless tracks that are now available on that application. And I just think this was a really cool thing to just see announced. Again, I know it's a Super Nintendo game going into NSO, but there are a lot of people who have memories around this game, and it's a very unique title, and if you look at it, it is a way to kind of show off that Joy-Con 2 mouse. I know you can use it on the menu, and there are some games like Civilization that I guess use it there. But something about this with Nintendo and them also setting it up to work right away out of the gate with this Mario Paint Super Nintendo game, it's just fun. I'm gonna fire it up, and again, just for nostalgia's sake, and play around with some of this stuff. Even you can animate, you can make whole scenes. It's just a good time. So definitely worth checking it out, I would say. And the fact that it goes into the Super Nintendo section means that if you have the $20 per year tier, it's there as well. So break out a USB mouse, dock the Switch 1, or play it Switch 2 with the Joy-Con 2 mouse and have a good time. So again, check it out. Definitely worth taking a trip back to the 90s for what was a very unique and very Nintendo release on the Super Nintendo. Next up, let's talk about Sony filing a lawsuit against Tencent, which is interesting because they're kind of tied together through investments and stuff. However, this one, I think many of us looked at and said, hold on, what's going on here, Tencent? Because this game, Light of Motiram, looks very much like Horizon Zero Dawn. In fact, I even made a video months and months ago just outlining this, like, yeah, Sony's not going to be very happy about this. And in fact, they are not, because they're filing a lawsuit just based on, I mean, the way the game looks, it looks, if you look at it, trademark, copyright infringement, all that stuff. And Sony put out about almost 50-page document around this whole thing with this lawsuit. But we can see this posted. This is over on GameFile. There are a couple of different sources I have down below in the description to check into this, along with the official documentation from Sony for this lawsuit. They say the suit, Sony Interactive Entertainment versus Tencent, was filed Friday in federal court in California, alleging that Tencent has violated Sony's Horizon copyrights and trademarks with the development and promotion of Light of Motiram. At least that's how everyone's kind of tripped up by that Motiram word. I mean, at least that's how I read it. Some are saying it's Motrium, or I'm going with Motiram, okay? Sony is asking the court to rule that Tencent violated Horizon's copyrights and trademarks and to adjoin them from producing work that does so. Basically, you can't release this game. Look at the game. It is through and through Horizon Zero Dawn, just about, right? Well, here's the thing that gets kind of interesting, okay? So as we're going through the documents here, we do learn some data points. So, for example, Horizon, the franchise itself, has now sold 38 million copies, like across everything that's been released, and I guess that would include the VR game, sure, Lego Horizon, but like the heavy lifting obviously is being done by Horizon Zero Dawn, any of the re-releases there with the remaster, and then Horizon Forbidden West. Now, they do use a bunch of examples for press headlines that call the game an outright ripoff from Tencent, down to even consumer reactions pointing out the similarities. Like they have Steam board messages of people going, "Why are you ripping off Horizon Zero Dawn?" Or looks like we have Horizon Zero Dawn at home. You know that saying? So all those parts are just there in the lawsuit with different screenshots as you're scrolling through. And here's the thing. Sony shared something that I have to assume this is, I don't say open and shut, but I don't know how you fight back against this if you're Tencent. The most eyebrow-raising part of the suit is Sony's claim that Tencent pitched PlayStation in early 2024, proposing that its Aurora Studios make a Horizon game. Sony says it declined, so that studio seemed to have gone on to make Light of Motiram. After Sony said, "No, we're not going to license Horizon Zero Dawn to you," they kind of go out and make the Horizon Zero Dawn. They just maybe change a few things out just to make sure it's not just Aloy in their trailers at that time, right? The gameplay. I will say the game itself is a little different. If you look at the gameplay trailer that they put out, it's not one-to-one exactly the same as Horizon Zero Dawn, but that's not necessarily what Sony is arguing here, it seems. It's mostly around the likeness of the game. Like, this looks almost exactly like Horizon Zero Dawn in the look and the tone and the everything, really. And it's obvious to many of us who saw that trailer when it popped up months ago, and now it's you put the screenshots side by side, it's almost blatant at that time, right? So just based on the fact that Tencent went to Sony, pitched the idea, tried to see if they could work out a licensing deal for Horizon, Sony said no. It's like, it's already kind of preemptively there, and then they decided to kind of go do it themselves. Now, I guess here we'd have to have the court decide if it's close enough to warrant what Sony is looking for, which is to just shut down sales of this game because it looks too much like Horizon. So we'll have to follow along with this one. It doesn't seem very surprising this would happen. Again, we all kind of saw it and really pointed it out at the end of last year when the initial trailer went up, but let me know what you think about this down below. Next up, let's talk about a bit of a false alarm around these games that are being de-indexed or removed from places like itch.io or Steam due to pressure from payment processors, because people are very much on edge about this currently as games are just being snapped out of existence, it feels like. Well, Mouthwashing came up, and this is a game that I've been meaning to get to at some point. Sure, I know we're going to see it on like consoles and stuff here, I believe before the end of the year, but in this case, it seemed like it maybe was shuffled in with all the other adult-themed games that were being pulled down due to Visa and MasterCard. Well, we could see this that was posted, and this is like one of the headlines that popped up. I said, uh-oh, I should probably go pick this up on Steam as soon as possible to make sure. But at the top here, it says, itch.io clarifies why one of the 2024's greatest PC games was removed from search results. Okay, so that's not what the headline originally said. It basically said one of 2024's biggest games was ripped down, now similar to these payment processors, something like that. So again, I saw that. There are reactions all over the place. It wasn't looking great, okay? So the original article reads, Martin, who works on audio and music for Mouthwashing, developer Wrong Organ, posted on Blue Sky that the title had been de-indexed from itch.io. Holden wrote that the game is currently still accessible if you have the link. It hasn't been fully removed yet, but not showing up in search results can still have a devastating impact on indie titles. Itch.io, however, responded, which, okay, here it is over on X, what the original article was titled. One of the greatest PC games 2024 was removed from itch.io search results. Anyway, itch.io responds saying, this is not true. This game has been indexed since October 2024, since it doesn't meet our indexing criteria. The developers are using a download button as a link to Steam. The developer took down any playable files from this page in 2024. So they're just kind of linking out to Steam. They don't have files on itch.io, so they don't index it the same as if you're searching for a game that is on itch.io. And to me, that makes sense. Like, it lines up. I'm not really sure what happened there, why I guess this developer thought otherwise. Maybe they just decided to search up Mouthwashing on itch.io after all this is going down, and they couldn't find it and thought, okay, that must be why. Just kind of link the two things together, when really it's been kind of like this, not showing up search results since the end of 2024, because they don't actually have the files on itch.io, which again, kind of makes sense. So fortunately here anyway, false alarm. So yes, Mouthwashing still available on Steam. Doesn't seem like it's going anywhere for now, but we'll see what the future holds there. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Gamescom, as we're starting to get an idea as to what we can expect going into this big show that's happening over in Germany. And Microsoft decided to tell us about all kinds of games that will be playable at their booth, which does include Hollow Knight Silksong, and that tells me, yeah, we're getting pretty close to its release. So let's take a look. This is over on Pure Xbox, and we can see they have their schedule lined up here. So they have 2 different broadcasts for Xbox. We have one on Wednesday, August 20th. That'll start 9 a.m. Eastern. That's going to feature the ROG Xbox Ally handhelds, Grounded 2, Keeper, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, and more. Then broadcast 2 will be taking place Thursday, August 21st, also 9 a.m. Eastern, featuring Ninja Gaiden 4, which, very excited to see more of that, Overwatch 2, The Outer Worlds 2, and more. Now, below that, they have a bunch of stuff that will be available there at their Xbox in-person booth, so you'll have to, of course, head out there. This, again, August 20th, starting there. But they have Hollow Knight Silksong, that is right at the top. And then a number of other titles that I'm curious to see gameplay on. I mean, you have Borderlands 4, Onimusha. I mean, yeah, if we have something playable there for Onimusha, that'd be cool. Metal Gear Solid Delta will be close to Metal Gear coming out, but still, it'll be fun to see it just kind of in action. Even Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, seeing that being playable there. Chronos: The New Dawn. So there's just a lot of stuff they'll have at their booth that'll have extended looks and some just being playable. But naturally, the big one, I know, is Hollow Knight, and it's good to hear that it's playable there. Apparently, it's coming out alongside of that ROG Xbox Ally handheld. Not exclusive to it, but it'll be releasing alongside of it for just about everything. And finally, the Hollow Knight Silksong people out there can stop showing up at every single event, State of Play, Developer Direct from Xbox, Indie Showcase, Nintendo Direct asking for Silksong, because there you go. You can head out to Germany to play it at Gamescom, so we'll see how dedicated everyone really is now. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what month in 2025 do you think Hollow Knight Silksong will finally release? Wow, November is the leading month here, then October, then September, then August. I am going with October. That's my guess. I don't necessarily know if ROG and Microsoft, or Asus, I say, with the ROG Ally Xbox handheld, want to put it out in November. I kind of feel like they want to get that out in October, give a little bit of time for like the holidays that are about to kick up. Also, I'm just kind of guessing here. So, and if it's October, great. A month sooner than November. So that's what I'm going with. But really, at this point, any of these months would be great, because that means that Hollow Knight Silksong is just a few months away. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Zeph, who says, I wonder if Sony and Microsoft could come together to make a single console. Neither of them make their money from hardware, and since everything is being pushed to go cross-platform, why not? Make one awesome system and both sides of the fence could develop games for it. It would make things so much easier. It would also probably make things very expensive, I'll just say that. And it's funny, back in the day, like way back in the day, when it was even Nintendo versus Sega, or Nintendo and PlayStation and Sega, there was always that question of, what if they all got together and made like a super system? And you know, us being kids, we're like, that would be amazing. It would take all the different cartridges or CDs, and we just have to get our parents to buy us one system for that holiday, and we're good to go the rest of the generation, which was really just another 3 or 4 years. But if that did happen, you would have some pretty high prices, because the idea has always been, if there's multiple systems in competition on the market, you're just going to get lower prices, because they'll not only try to undercut each other, but try to even just work out against each other there, and not go, oh, there's no one else around and you can only buy from us. Well, it's $1,000 now. And I still don't necessarily know if that would happen, just because there would be that sense of, well, eventually someone will just go find something else to do. They'll go outside, or they'll just play any other games out there. I mean, there's so many games you can play on PC. There's a number of free-to-play titles. And even now, a lot of people are just fine with their current systems. They don't, hey, if it's $1,000, they go, I'll live with the PS5 for a bit of the Series X, or hang out on my Switch 2 for a while. So that's the other thing. You do have to also drive people now more than ever to trying to upgrade, because the differences are just not as noticeable when it comes to visuals. There's got to be some other big aha moment to get people to move up to the next thing. And if pricing is that high, it just becomes a massive barrier. So a super system, sure, I guess it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. But for the sake of the market, I think I'd be okay right now. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to check out the latest episode of Click R3, where Mystic Ryan, and myself decided to live stream it and had a lot of fun with the audience talking about all the different things going on currently with PlayStation. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.